Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. Outside 2024 is a tense and emotional thriller set during a zombie apocalypse. The story centers around a family, Francis, Iris, and their son Lucas, who take refuge in a remote farmhouse trying to survive as the world around them collapses. Francis becomes increasingly paranoid, convinced that the only way to protect his family is through isolation. He locks Iris and Lucas in the basement, believing that they are safer there while he guards against the threat of zombies. As the film progresses, the tension between the family members rises. Iris becomes increasingly frustrated with Francis's oppressive control, while their son Joshua decides to leave in search of a supposed safe zone. A series of violent confrontations unfold, culminating in Francis's tragic death when Joshua, in a moment of panic, mistakes him for a zombie. The story reaches its peak as the family struggles to survive both the zombie horde outside and the emotional and physical turmoil inside the house. In a final desperate attempt to save her son, Iris fights off Francis's zombified form, but the damage to their family is already done. With the death of their patriarch, the surviving family members must come to terms with their loss and the harsh reality of their new world. The film delves deep into themes of trust, survival, and the breakdown of family bonds under extreme pressure. Outside explores how the apocalypse doesn't just threaten life, it also tests the limits of human relationships, leaving the survivors to navigate both the external threat of zombies and their fractured internal connections. This terrifying story begins in an abandoned farm far from the city, where a family was driving an old and dilapidated car, fleeing from the cities where the zombie virus had spread. When they arrived at the house in the middle of the desert, Francis remembered something painful from his past. He got out of the car first to make sure there was no danger inside the house. But the house was dark and in bad condition, and above him, he heard a strange sound, and when he entered, he found his father's corpse on the bed. It seemed that his father had bitten his arm and decided to end his life before turning into a zombie. Francis took his father's gun, stepped out of the house into the hallway, and tried to collect himself, but he heard his mother's voice apologizing. His mother appeared in a terrifying way, resembling a dead person, and she was apologizing to him. Her body was split in half and her intestines were visible. She was trying to drag herself and ask her son for forgiveness. Francis had no choice but to end her suffering with the gun. After that, he buried his parents on the farm in front of his children and wife. Night fell, and Francis couldn't sleep, and there was clear tension in his relationship with his wife Iris. They felt a temporary relief when they found clean water, but Iris decided to go back home to avoid direct contact with him. Joshua asked his mother if they should bring in their belongings, but she told him to leave the first aid kit in the kitchen so it would be accessible in case of an emergency. When she was alone, she lit a cigarette, and Francis tried to talk to her, but the situation was strange. Joshua suggested that they go to a nearby store to see if there was anything useful. Lucas, his little son, was afraid they would encounter a zombie, and he was terrified, but Francis reassured him and promised to return quickly, asking him to stay with his mother. Joshua noticed the watch on his father's arm, which belonged to his grandfather. Armed with their only gun, they entered the warehouse. Francis called out to the person who worked in the warehouse, but there was no response. Joshua found a lantern, and they tried to open the chicken coop. When the boy looked up, he saw the worker hanging from the ceiling, having chosen to end his life in his own way. But they noticed that the keys they needed were hanging from his pants. Francis forced his son to take the keys despite his fear. The boy approached the corpse to get the keys, but the corpse fell on him. His father decided to let him handle the situation on his own. The boy managed to grab the keys, but he was terrified and started wiping every spot the corpse had touched. Francis gave his son Lucas a cane to chew on, and the boy liked its taste, but his wife looked upset and asked Francis to come with her for a moment. She took him aside and told him that she feels this store is linked to the roots of the trauma he is experiencing now. Francis appeared uncomfortable and had difficulty concentrating. His wife tried to help him, but he distanced himself from her at the first opportunity. In the basement, they found drawings on the walls indicating that Francis had been abused by his father. At night, they all sat down to eat and thanked God before starting the meal, which was new for the family. Iris and Joshua looked at each other in confusion, and even Francis seemed unsure of what to say. Lucas was still drinking sugarcane juice, so his mother asked him to eat the rice, but he refused until his father asked him to do so, and he complied. Joshua tried to turn on the radio, but they found it needed power, so they had to eat first. Francis praised the simple meal that Iris had prepared, but she seemed shocked and unable to respond, and asked him what they would eat tomorrow. He reassured her that there was enough food at home, but she didn't want to stay any longer. Francis suggested that they stay for a while because the place was safe with clean water and protection. He agreed to stay until they knew what was happening outside, but Iris didn't understand how they would know without electricity or signal. Iris remembered what the news had told the survivors. to head north to avoid the fate of Francis's father. Joshua interrupted her, saying that his girlfriend Alice wrote that they and their family were going to the mountains, but his father wasn't ready to go look for his son's friend. Joshua thought his friends might be alive, but his father told him they were definitely dead. Francis's relationship with his children was different. He was strict with Joshua, but he always showed love to his son Lucas. After dinner, Joshua sat outside looking at pictures of his girlfriend until his phone died. Francis was watching him from inside, and his wife came to criticize him for being harsh with their eldest son. At night, Francis suffered from childhood nightmares, where he saw visions of his father locking himself in the basement and crying for him to stop. Iris felt his distress, woke him up, and offered him comfort during this difficult time. The next day, they agreed that the place was safe, but Iris insisted that they should leave as well. She told him that he was reliving his painful memories at night, and she didn't want him to go through them again. Suddenly, he changed the subject and said that both of them were responsible for the collapse of their marriage. In the end, he agreed to her plan to leave, and they decided to head north to find the mountain where her people were hiding. Joshua said that his uncle Diego had the same idea, but Francis was surprised and asked him about it. His son explained to him that Diego had been talking to his mother before they left the city. Iris fell silent, and Francis said it wasn't surprising. She explained to him that Diego just wanted to check on them, and that she was the one who called him because Francis wasn't answering her calls. This revelation surprised Francis, and he was about to speed up the car until they reached a bridge filled with corpses, so he stopped the car. Francis said there was no way to cross, but his wife suggested they could cross if they moved some obstacles. He warned her that if the bridge was closed, there must be a reason, and he was about to turn back, but Iris got out of the car to inspect the area herself. She walked among the abandoned cars and corpses, but when she tried to move the barrier, a zombie suddenly stirred, began mumbling, and asked for her permit. This terrifying creature headed towards her, so her husband jumped out of the car to save her. The shot took down the zombie, but it also alerted other zombies. Their children started honking the car horn to warn him, but the sound attracted more zombies, and they began to surround the car. The children were terrified and calling for their parents. But with a single shot, Francis attracted the zombies towards him and Iris, but he ran out of bullets. And when he saw a grenade on the ground, he picked it up and used it to escape just in time. The family began walking back to Francis's old house. When they arrived, Iris thought that they had tried this idea before. In the morning, Francis quietly went back to the bridge to try to retrieve the car, while Iris tidied up the house and watched their children play. When he returned, he lied and said the car was no longer usable. He went to get some gasoline, determined to start the generator, despite the painful memories choking him. Finally, he managed to start the generator, and they had a house with electricity and air conditioning. His wife was not happy and warned him about wasting gasoline, to which he replied that he would only run the generator on special occasions. They were able to enjoy a rare moment together, which was a bit different. Iris tried to enjoy her family's happiness, but inside, she was about to explode. Francis turned on the TV and started watching their wedding video, where Iris was radiant in every shot, smiling deeply unlike the bitterness she had become now. He approached her slowly and tried to seduce her, and together they succeeded in easing the tension that had existed between them for a long time. At the same time, after charging his phone, Joshua was entertaining himself by looking at pictures of his girlfriend. His younger brother entered, scared of being alone, and when Joshua yelled at him to leave, he reconsidered and allowed him to stay with him. While they were together, they looked at family photos. Lucas noticed that Joshua resembled their uncle Diego, and when they saw an old picture of their father, they noticed he had the same sad look that had now appeared in their mother's eyes. Lucas said he feels that their mother is tired of them because she is always angry. Joshua tried to reassure him and said that when people are sad, they express their anger towards those around them. Then Lucas said maybe that's why their father was harsh with Josh, which shocked Joshua and made him realize that the relationship had been tense before all this. Lucas said he hopes his parents will stop being upset and promised that things will get better because they love each other. In the morning, Iris told Francis that he looked like a farmer and seemed to be adapting to life in the countryside. Francis admitted that all the problems in their marriage were because of him, regretting all the pain he had caused her. He admitted that they would not be able to return to their old life. He thought that all the previous worries disappeared when the pandemic started, and he believes that they got a second chance to come back to each other. When they went down for breakfast, their children noticed the change in their father's attitude. He became friendlier and offered them fried eggs. But when he went to fetch the eggs from the barn, he discovered that a dog had eaten the chickens. Francis tried to chase the dog away, but the dog bit him on the hand before running off. Iris, who has nursing skills, treated his wound, but the tension returned between them. Later, Joshua found himself standing in the middle of the road trying to catch a signal on the radio, and he managed to hear part of a message talking about a camp. He called out to his father and mother anxiously. Francis, with concern, said that Joshua might have heard wrong and asked his wife and son to verify the information while he would check on another matter. At dinner, Iris couldn't forget the possibility of them being near the camp signal. She suggested they search for the car to confirm whether it was indeed broken down. Francis asked her skeptically how they could get past the blocked bridge, reminding her that they needed another route and a working car for a long journey to an unknown camp. Iris insisted that the attempt was worth it and said that they might find a doctor to help them treat the dog's wound. Her husband asked her if she really understood what was happening outside and reminded her of the danger they faced at the bridge and what happened to Lucas's classmate at school. Iris complained and asked him not to talk about this topic in front of the kids to avoid scaring them more. Lucas, being small, just wanted to live in peace. I felt the need to end the conversation, so she got up and left angrily. In a later scene, Francis working on the terrace when Joshua came to ask him if they could turn on the generator, listen to music, or even try to catch a signal. His father explained to him that the player didn't have a radio, but Joshua insisted and asked him about what was really happening outside. Francis reminded him of what he had done to save him and his little brother, then challenged him and asked if he was ready to do the same for them. Joshua confidently replied that he would, so Francis took him outside, set up a target, and handed him the gun. The boy was holding the gun, his hands trembling. After a moment of hesitation, he fired. Suddenly, Iris and Lucas appeared, bringing painful memories for Francis. When he regained his composure, he gave his son more specific instructions on how to handle the weapon. Iris arrived quickly and asked him what was happening, noticing that he was pressuring his son too much, but the boy shot at the target and then broke down crying. This sound attracted the first zombie, who was chanting its last prayers, and others from its horde joined in. The zombies began to move towards the family, and the group decided to retreat to the house. But they didn't have enough bullets to defend themselves, so they had no choice but to flee. They were able to take shelter inside the house, and the zombies stood in front of the house, repeating the last words they had spoken in their lives. Suddenly, the zombies' attention turned to the closed door, causing Francis to collapse in despair, convinced that he had condemned his family to a horrific fate. When the zombies began breaking the door, the family prepared for the end. They heard the sound of car horns in the street and the sound of a collision that caught the zombies' attention towards a mysterious car. In the morning, the house was damaged, and Francis went out to inspect the damage. The chicken coop was destroyed, and the eggs were broken. Iris approached him, worried, and asked him about their next plan. At first, Francis arrives at a waterway where he meets his brother Diego, the owner of the cart that saved them. Diego told Francis that his wife had been bitten, then fell silent when Francis's daughter was mentioned. Francis asked his brother why he had come, and Diego replied that he was heading north but wanted to say goodbye to their parents. Then, Francis told him that their parents had passed away a long time ago, and he said he never expected to return home. Then he added that this house was doomed to fail and asked him how long he could live on the farm. But Francis preferred to reassure Diego that his family was fine without opposing. Diego apologized for the past and admitted that he came to take them with him to the north, where he couldn't believe that Francis had managed to take care of himself and his family. But Diego's words saddened Francis, so he pointed the gun at his brother and forced him to leave, quickly telling him that nothing here belonged to him. Diego did not object and left, but before leaving, he gave Francis a map and told him that he could use it if they changed their minds and decided to meet him. Francis thought about destroying the map, but in the end, he kept it. And when he returned home, he was carrying some things his brother had left behind, and he lied to his wife again, saying he was late because he was helping Diego. Then Francis started putting barriers on all the windows of the house, and Joshua quietly asked his mother how she was feeling. She replied that she was just tired, but he knew when he looked at her that she shared the same smile. Lucas tried to entertain himself by swatting flies, and when he went down to the basement, he quickly realized that there was a zombie nearby. His mother appeared behind him to calm him down and told him that the zombie wouldn't be able to enter the house from there. She added that it looked weak, and that once it disappeared, they would be able to go out again. Francis heard this conversation, so he went out to look for another zombie, and he encountered one who surprised him by asking to end his life. The zombie knelt and repeated the same request, so Francis hesitated for a moment, then raised the scythe to grant him his wish. Then Francis returned home carrying the blood-stained weapon, his shirt soaked, and called out to his wife while holding the severed head, proud that he had to kill the fast zombie that was about to bite him. The sight frightened the boys, and their reaction was frustrating for Iris, who asked Francis to control himself. He warned her that there were many zombies nearby, that the outside had become very dangerous, and advised her never to think about leaving the house. Then later, Francis actually destroyed the map. He hid it to prevent his family from thinking about leaving the house. After a while, Francis gathered the family and surprised them with a decorated Christmas tree. in an attempt to distract them from the grim reality outside. However, Iris began to feel uneasy again. Francis continued to act as if they were living a normal life, ignoring that the world around them was collapsing. Lucas asked his mother for a wheel for Christmas, and when it was Joshua's turn, he said he wanted a map. Iris was surprised by his request and asked him why. Joshua replied that she should ask Francis, because he had found a map in his father's room. Francis pretended not to understand and promised that he would bring him a map next Christmas. Then, when it was his turn, Francis said he wanted another child, convinced that this was the right moment to expand the family. He added, saying that they still have a chance to live a normal life. But Iris replied that she does not intend to live like this, pointing out that there is nothing normal in their lives. She insisted that she wanted to go out now and said that they barely eat rice, and told him that he couldn't hide the truth. She explained that the zombies had become weaker, and she was confident that she could escape from them. She insisted that someone needed to go out soon to look for food. Then Francis told the kids that their mother intends to abandon them, and that he is not sure if she will come back because they never cared for them, adding that she wanted to leave them a long time ago. Francis revealed that Iris had considered leaving even before the pandemic, shocking the children. Francis seized this moment to force her to talk about the subject, and Iris began to explain to her children, while crying, that her decision was not about them, but simply because she was not happy in her life and was seeking a fresh start to be a better person and mother. But Francis accused her of lying and suggested that she only wanted to go out to look for someone specific. This accusation angered Joshua, who asked his father to stop talking to his mother that way. And when Francis responded harshly, Iris intervened and explained that she just wanted to distance herself from Francis and couldn't imagine living with him anymore. She was convinced that there was still time to save the kids. Then she asked him to hand over the map, but he remained silent, took it out of his pocket, and burned it in front of everyone. Iris tried to take it from him, and during the struggle, he hit her. The children witnessed that their father had become unstable. The next day, Francis left the house, while Iris noticed that Lucas was reading. I sat next to him and read him the moral of the story about a liar trying to attract the attention of the entire village. Lucas noticed that the boy in the story was just a liar. At the same time, Francis heard gunshots and strange noises, but he didn't see anyone. He returned home carrying a tree trunk and a chain, determined to protect his family from the zombies he claimed were surrounding the house. But Joshua saw no logic in this, because he hadn't seen any zombies for weeks, and he suspected that Francis just wanted to imprison them. He accused his father of destroying the map and claimed that he was acting like his father and mother did when they used to lock him up as a child. His son's words affected Francis, and in a fit of rage, he slapped him on the cheek. When the clock struck, he began to insult him severely, justifying his actions by saying he was only trying to protect them. Suddenly, they heard a knock on the door, and there was a man asking for help. He introduced himself as an injured soldier and said he had nowhere to go. Joshua saw him from the window, and before his father could shoot, he opened the door. The man had no signs of bites and said he was from Delta Camp. After a day and a half, he explained that he alone survived the zombie attack on his camp, and that he was the last to survive. Francis insisted that there were many zombies outside, but the soldier replied that, according to the area he was in, the zombies had disappeared. The soldier explained that he survived thanks to a stranger who told him about this house before the zombies attacked. Iris realized that her husband had lied to her about Diego. Francis did not comment on that and ordered the soldier to leave, but the boys begged him to stay, so he decided to imprison him in the cellar for their safety. At night, Joshua woke up and told his mother that he intended to go look for his uncle Diego. He thought the soldier might know something about Diego, but Joshua was upset with his father. He admitted that he feels his father doesn't really see him, and revealed that he knows Francis is not his biological father. But he still hopes that Francis understands him and continues to consider him his son. Iris told him that she couldn't leave Lucas alone, and Joshua asked her to tell Francis to be brave. In the morning, Iris and Lucas were having breakfast with the soldier, who was respectful to everyone, even to Francis. When Francis noticed Joshua's absence and saw the doors open, he realized he had left. He returned to the kitchen and killed the innocent soldier in front of his son, then asked Iris not to leave him. Then he violently hit her with a hammer. When she woke up, she found herself locked in the basement with Lucas. When she saw her son safe, she started calling for Francis, who was sitting at the table eating quietly next to the soldier's corpse. She noticed that the dog had returned home, and moments later, he opened the basement door and appeared in the soldier's uniform with a small piece of meat to eat. But Iris prevented Lucas from touching the strange meat. This increased Francis's nervousness, and he told them that when he was young, his father would get angry if he didn't finish his food. While he was speaking, Iris took the opportunity to hide a knife and pretended to agree with him, telling him that she needed him and that no one was waiting for her outside. He replied, saying that he needed her too, but he took the hidden knife and said he couldn't trust her anymore. Iris began searching for an escape and managed to pull out a wooden plank, but it fell to the ground and she lost consciousness. After hours, she woke up and found Lucas asking her if they were going to die, or if he would become like the boy in the story. Suddenly, Francis was startled by the sound of his son's scream, so he ran to the basement to find out what was happening. But Iris seized the opportunity, stabbed him, then locked him in the basement and fled with Lucas. Despite her attempts, reality began to merge with the painful memories. She returned home, took some things, and unlatched the chains from the door, while Francis was screaming from the basement. When they went out, they found Diego had turned into a zombie, eating the soldier's corpse. The soldier kept repeating the word "run," but the commotion brought Francis back to the present. He tried to go out to help them, but Iris tried to avoid being bitten. Lucas caught Diego's attention, who grabbed him, but his mother pulled him away and fought Diego, placing a chair between them. Francis came out just in time and destroyed his brother to save them, then blamed Iris for letting Diego into the house and putting her family in danger. He was about to attack her, but Lucas, with a trembling voice, said that his uncle had bitten him. Iris tried to help him and took a sickle to stop the infection. Francis stood frozen in place, while Iris prepared everything she needed to save her son from turning into a zombie. She told Francis to go get the car because the boy needed a blood transfusion from the hospital. Francis ran quickly through the farm until he reached the bridge, where Joshua was just trying to breathe and say his name. But his son thought he had turned into a zombie because of his appearance, which led him to shoot him. He fell to his knees and tried to apologize, but he realized there was nothing more he could do, and he had to cry over his father's death. He returned to the car and went home to find Iris singing to her son, unaware that this was her son who had returned. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button.